You're listening to CX Passport, the show about creating great customer experiences with a dash of travel talk. Each episode, we'll talk with our guest about great CX, travel, and just like the best journeys, explore new directions we never anticipated. I'm your host, Rick Denton. I believe the best meals are served outside and require a passport. Let's get going. Ooh, talk about an industry that got hit hard during the pandemic. The movie theater industry, lockdowns, near zero new content, new distribution competition. If there was ever an industry you could excuse for just hiding in a bunker and hoping it all goes away, this would be that industry. Not the case for today's guest, Todd Weishaar of Cinemark. Todd and I came to know each other right before the pandemic and have stayed connected through it. Each time I talked with him, I got greater insight and appreciation for the work of a team and a company tirelessly working to innovate and create a customer experience that will delight and connect with customers for the future. Nobody wanted this crisis, but it's encouraging to hear stories of innovation and growth rising like a phoenix out of it. I'm looking forward to getting deeper into these stories with Todd today. Todd, welcome to CX Passport.
Hey, thanks for having me.
It's going to be fun. I am excited about some upcoming releases. You and I have talked at length about the Bond movie and my excitement about that, and trying to figure out how I'm going to get out to Phoenix to see that with my son. And I'm just really excited to be talking about the movie industry today. But again, what an industry impact you experienced. I just want to kind of listen. Talk to me about those early days. What was that like?
Yeah, it was definitely interesting. And it's funny you should mention Bond, because that was the first of the major movies to have their date shifted. And that was when we started to see this is real. I mean, again, we were watching the pandemic and we were, understanding what was going on, but the shutdown was a seminal moment, if you will. That literally we went from one day operating as normal to completely closed the next.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was hard. It was really an interesting time, because first we had to take care of our customers, right? There were people who had bought tickets for the movies and that we weren't going to show, and there were people on Movie Club that was a subscription plan and they weren't going to be able to use it. So
that's right. Yeah.
First, lean in on those customers, make sure that we're taking care of them, and again, they understand this wasn't something that was just limited to our industry, right? I mean, they could see it across the world. So we had a good understanding with our customers, and they were great. And then take care of the employees, because essentially everybody went on furlough or were laid off for that period of time. And then worried about our sites. We had a lot of stock with perishable items. We had projectors that weren't necessarily supposed to not be running. So on each floor of our building, we have different graphics from movies and things like that. But right outside of my office is Apollo 13.
Okay.
Houston, we've had a problem, but it felt like that. We're trying to shut it down. Well, we've never done this before. And then eventually you have to ask, well, can we turn it back on? We're like, well, we'll get to that eventually, but let's take care of our customers, our employees, and then our buildings and our equipment first.
I hadn't even thought about that, Todd. Even though like I said, you and I have stayed connected through this, I didn't even think about of beyond the movie and the business and the customers and the employees. I wasn't even thinking about equipment and perishables and all of that. That had to be a particularly interesting thing to deal with, because it couldn't have been in any of your operating manuals. It couldn't have been, and here's what we do to get rid of billions of, I picked my perishable, chocolate candy. How did y'all,
sure. Yeah,
I mean, what did that look like when you're trying to figure out things from scratch?
Well, the interesting part was that first iteration of being shut down was, this will be 2 weeks, this will be maybe 3 weeks, right? The idea of flatten the curve. So you take a little different approach when you think it's just that very, very short term, but it has started to lengthen out. Then we were like, okay, we've got to be thinking about this differently now, because again, we've got tons of items that are going to perish because they're beyond their expiration date and we can't sell those. And that's when it really started to get more real, and that, hey, we could be in this for a long period of time, and we have to start thinking very differently about it.
The concern for the customer is one that I remember you talking about when we were there, and I'd actually forgotten about Movie Club and that subscription and all of that. You talked about customers having sort of that patience up front, and we saw that across the pandemic, right? Initially, oh, my hold times are longer. Oh, that. Did you ever get was there ever a vibe somewhere in the middle that you were starting to sense that customers were losing their patience with Cinemark, or was it, and not even just Cinemark, but just the industry in general? Or was this specifically one of those that the customer was sort of just locked out completely, and it was more about how are we going to reconnect to them when things get going again?
Yeah, it was definitely more of the latter in that, because it's a pandemic, and because, the experience that we're creating for them is necessarily with others in a theater.
Yeah.
We figured that it was going to take a little bit longer for them to be comfortable with coming back to the movies. So our goal was to, again, to do the right thing for them before they had to ask for it. So again, proactively suspending those memberships and saying, well, we're not going to charge you for it right now.
Yeah.
And then proactively, almost immediately pushing out that all of the points that you've earned are going to roll over, and we're going to hold on to that for a period of time, and we'll figure out what that period of time is. But for right now, don't worry, you're not losing anything. All of the benefits are still going to be there. And that went a long way with our customers, because that said, hey, we're looking out for you. We're trying to take care of you. And you don't have to call, and you don't have to bug us, and you don't have to, tell us this is what you want. Again, that team did a great job of being really proactive with that.
That is so encouraging to see. I think that was one of the best responses that companies chose coming out of the pandemic. I think of the hospitality industry and how your tier status will stick around, or even dare I say it, the airline industry. Even they got a few things right there, in that they extended tiers and points and all of that. But I've got to imagine that was a key element for y'all's approach of, we're going to take care of the customer first. Great. So now you've taken care of the customer. You've got that stabilized as best as we've got, right? It's stabilized.
Sure.
And then now it's okay. This is reality. This is what we're going to be living in. If we're not going to just say, all right, screw it, we're out, shut the doors, we're gone. How do you innovate? I'm trying to almost imagine those conversations sitting in those virtual rooms. How did you start to make that pivot from we've stabilized to innovation? What did that look like?
Yeah, it was really interesting. We had, again, everybody was on some level of furlough. So we did create a bunch of small teams. And the small teams were first to look at, what can we do? Right? Every state, every county, almost every city was different in what they were going to allow, especially early days. So we don't have a theater that we can open. We don't have customers that are going to come visit us, and we don't have content to show. Right. And then we have to deal with all of the issues with the pandemic as well. So it's trying to put those together in a meaningful fashion. So first, just deciding, how would we open if everything went away tomorrow? What would that look like? And create a list of all of our locations and said, what order would we open them? Because you can't overwhelm HR with the rehiring. We can't overwhelm our distributors and food and beverage and all of that by opening everything all at once. That's just too much of a shock to the system. So we phased out, this is what it would look like based on our DMAs, based on how close we are to other locations, kind of lean in on Texas because that's where our headquarters is and probably the least restricted. But I counted this morning, and we had 136 iterations of that list.
Oh gosh! Holy cow!
First opened the first one and then opened our last one. So it just changed constantly. So we're just being open to the fact that our plan today is going to be different than the plan tomorrow. And then understanding too, from the studio side, they weren't going to release their big movies, not in the middle of a pandemic, right? Yeah. It just didn't make sense. So what would we even show? So we have a film team who really basically went through the back catalog and said, what are great movies that are a great cinematic experience that are just going to show better in a theater than they would in your house? Like, and one that did great was Raiders of the Lost Ark, right? The original with Harrison Ford. I mean, that's a great cinematic experience.
It really, that was a good choice. I remember y'all doing that. Yes.
Yeah. So negotiating with the studios, so saying, look, we can't charge full price for these, so negotiating what that ticket price might look like, and what's fair to the customer, and then fair to us and fair to the studio. So a lot of negotiation on that side as well to show what we call comeback classics.
Yeah.
Or internally we just call library content. So that's all we have something to show now. Then those teams work through all of the sanitation standards and what does it take to actually be open? And then honestly, the finance side of it as well. Like, how many seats will we have to be able to fill to make this worthwhile doing?
Got it.
And really changed it how we looked at it and said, hey, what's that what's the cost of staying open versus the cost of being closed? And as long as it was, not the fixed cost of rent and all that, we had to pay either way. But if we could turn on the lights and turn on the projectors and maybe open half of the screens, could we do that in a meaningful way?
I just love that approach, Todd. And I think there's another innovation here. I think I just cut you off, but I'm just, you think of, or at least I thought a lot of, okay, just how do we clean the theaters, right? And that would be the big thing. But there's so much more that you've described, from the content, negotiating the ticket prices, to which lights do we turn on, to which do we leave off. It's so detailed and granular. These innovations just kept coming, and it sounds like there's even more you've got. And I cut you off. I apologize for that. Go ahead.
Oh, absolutely. And the one I wanted to talk about a little bit was how customers bought their tickets, and again, kudos to our IT teams for saying when you would go to buy a ticket, you pick a seat, and based on, again, the standards for that locale, it would block off the seats around you automatically. So if you bought 2 tickets, it would block off, like a circle of seats that said, okay, this is our 6-foot radius, or whatever the requirement for that locale was. And you could see it. And then you could see when you looked at a map what other people had bought, and saw that those were blocked off for safety as well. So from that customer perspective, you could feel that, hey, we're going to take care of you. You're not going to be sitting right next to somebody. And that was important in the early days as well.
That is a great example. And I'm talking to you as just a movie theater customer, not the CX Passport guy or anything, just as a customer. I loved that one. And the reason that I love that one is one of the things that, anxiety is the wrong word, but just one of the detractors of going to the theater is, I don't know what seat I'm going to get. Am I going to show up for a really big release and I'm on the cliched front row with my neck straining? Or, am I going to be on the edges, or whatever? Pick your poison. By being able to, no different than a seat map at a sporting event, or what that looks like, to know that this is my seat. Not only did it make me, more excited about, okay, hey, I get to go see this, but the other part is it reduced the amount of time that I didn't get to the theater a ton early, right? And I still had time to go get my concessions, go, get my extra items that I want there, but I could just do that in time. So that was brilliant. And these are examples of these innovations that are pandemic forced, that are going to go forward and are just absolute delighters for customers.
Yes, absolutely.
I got to talk about another one. And that is, and I am a raving fan and an active customer of the private watch parties. Brilliant. Our family loved getting together to watch Christmas Vacation as a private watch party last December. Awesome. And I'm actually hoping we make it an annual tradition. And there's an incredible temptation for me right now to just shut this podcast down and you and I just swap Christmas Vacation quotes, but I won't do it. How did you use the voice of the customer, right? So that had to have been some input. How did that Cinemark customer help you come up with that idea and all these other innovations?
Yeah, the watch party was one of the biggest innovations we came out of this pandemic with. And it was a little bit building on what we just talked about with how the seats would block themselves off as you would go to buy a ticket. And kind of 2 or 3 things happened at once. So first we had that seat mapping and said, hey, that's interesting. Then, of course, we had the reduced capacity and the reduced ticket prices in that period of time. And then watching customer behavior. And these kind of happened almost simultaneously, where as we're mapping that out and doing the math of like, how many people would we actually be able to put into the theater? And you kind of block them out, you do the math, and it's never perfect. Like if we're at 50% capacity, it's never like exactly half. It's a little bit less than that. And you take that times the ticket price, and somebody had asked, well, what if someone buys out the theater? We're like, interesting. Do we care? Is that a good thing or is it a bad thing? And then behavior-wise, we actually saw people trying that. Can you block out, buy the seats, which block 2 on either side, and then buy another one blocks 2 on either side? Like they actually attempted to do that.
Oh, interesting.
Like, oh, okay. And this at the same time, we're trying to figure out how to deal with what looked like a competitive threat in Walmart. In that Walmart was showing. Exactly. They were showing drive-up movies in their parking lot.
Yeah, I forgot about those.
So that's interesting. How do we even compete, right? Because we can't turn a regular theater into a drive-in. It's just not something we would consider doing. Now, it turned out to be a huge bust, right? It was a lot of press, but not a lot of meat on that experience that they created. But it really got us thinking differently about that. And that's where we came up with the watch party. So, well, we can't fill the theater anyway because of the capacity restrictions that the state and local governments had. And we were showing library content. Well, let's just let the customer pick that. You can rent out the whole theater for, essentially at the time, $99. Pick your movie, pick your friends, and up to 20, which would be the capacity people we could put in that theater, and come on in and do it. And this launched right about the same time we had our test theaters in June or late June of 2020. We had 5 theaters in the DFW area, and just as an idea to try it, those theaters were only open about halfway just because of staffing issues and all of that. So, in a 18 screen theater, there's 9 that are just sitting dark. So we said, let's just turn one of those on, try the watch party idea. We don't have to worry about cleaning it in line, because we can do that after the shift, because we're only going to put one show there. We don't have to turn it over for a next round of guests.
Got it. Okay.
Turned it on, and again, turned it over from an IT perspective, like in a ridiculous amount of time. But they're literally copying hard drives and driving them to locations to get all the films on the projectors, and it sold out like immediately. And I remember that Thursday and Friday that we just kept putting up times, like, okay, light up another theater and sell out, light up another theater and sell out. Like, okay, I think we've got something here.
Yeah.
And for a while, it was really, we would show the library content as a regular, buy your own ticket and come and sit with people you don't know, or a watch party. And it was extremely successful and extremely popular, and remains that way as well. I mean, we've had over 3 million people attend private watch parties.
It's brilliant. It absolutely is, Todd. I already said I love it. I want to use it again. I'm actually actively trying to figure out if I can pull this off for the Bond film or not, but still working on that one. Absolutely love it.
And it's fun too, because we're customers, right? Everybody that works here is a moviegoer as well, and I went to or purchased myself at least 4 different private watch parties as well, because I'm like, this works, and be able to call up my friends and say, hey, let's go to a movie, and it's going to be just us. All right. That's a great experience.
Isn't that great? Isn't that great? And so, in that vein, so for me, Christmas Vacation is just it's entertainment, it's escape, it's the mind kind of shuts off, and movies in general can be that model of escapism. And even when it's a challenging movie, right, there's some disturbing, but you escape your world and immerse into another world. I love to get immersed in that experience. Now, I didn't think about this, but when you and I were talking earlier, you mentioned that it's a lot like travel. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so it's basically taking you to somewhere where you aren't right now, and that's what travel is. I'm going somewhere else. And for the movies, that's going maybe to somewhere that you wouldn't normally get to see. Hey, I'm going to go overseas or something like that, or with somebody that you wouldn't normally be able to be with, like a movie star, right? You're taking that journey with them.
Yeah.
Or go someplace that just you can't go, like, hey, I'm going to go to outer space or whatever, right? You're still traveling to those places just for a brief period of time. But again, you're taking everything of your normal day to day, turning it off and saying, I'm going to immerse in this event, in this story, in this experience for my 2 hours. And then when it's over, I get to go back home and reflect on it like I was there.
Believing the escapism of the virtual travel of the movies. And it is true. I love getting out there, or not getting out there, getting in there and being immersed and being out there, because so far my outer space skills are limited. You're absolutely right. But let's come back down to earth. Join me here in the First Class Lounge. We will move quickly here. Hopefully have a little bit of fun here. But what's a dream travel location from your past?
So in the middle 90s, I had a chance to live in Germany, in a little town in northern Bavaria. And so living there isn't like traveling there, but it was like the perfect location, because if we got up in the morning and said, I want Italian for dinner, yeah, I can drive to Italy in time, or I want, I have French food for dinner, I can drive to France, or just very, very close to the border of the Czech Republic. So from a travel perspective, it was perfect. There wasn't anywhere you couldn't go, but the city itself was glorious too, and spent more time there just enjoying the city itself than I did traveling around it, because it was so fantastic.
Oh, that's nice. Tell me the name of the city. I want to have this marked down.
Bamberg, Germany.
Bamberg, Germany. Okay, so now everybody knows that not only do you get Germany, you get France, Italy, and the Czech Republic thrown in as well. I can't wait. I want to check that one out. That sounds really neat. What is a dream travel location you've not been to yet?
Not been to yet would be Norway. So again, that's kind of my lineage, mostly Norwegian, and Looks to be a beautiful country with great people, and yeah, just a place I would love to be a part of.
I don't get Norway mentioned on the show that often, but you're right. It's classic. The mind goes to the fjords, but there's so much more to it. Now, this Texan here, right? So for those that are listening, both Todd and I are talking to you from actually Plano, Texas. We're both in Plano right now. And I got to imagine there's a small window of travel opportunity that works for the Texans when it comes to Norway from a weather perspective. So we'll have to find a way between July 17th and August 3rd to get out there to the country. What is a favorite thing to eat?
Normally, I would answer that question with pizza, because you can do anything you want with pizza.
Sure.
But more often than not, my favorite thing is to just ask somebody, what do you recommend? Go to a restaurant, especially one I've not been to before, and ask, what do you recommend? It's rarely bad. And even if it is, I got out of my comfort zone a little bit and tried something I wouldn't normally try. So I almost always will do that.
Your favorite thing to eat is, what do you recommend? I love that. What a fun little twist. You win, Todd. I have not had that one on the episode. This is cool. Okay, what do you recommend? Gonna stick with that. So here's the opposite of the recommendation. What is a thing your parents forced you to eat but you hated as a kid?
Oh, cabbage. I just can't, still can't do it. We grew up on a farm and, grew a lot of our own vegetables, and that cabbage was just one that I could not warm up to.
I'm all right with cabbage, but it's never my go-to. If it's there, I'll eat it, but it's definitely not my go-to. Grew up on a farm. Where? If I can divert for
Wisconsin.
Okay. Yeah, I can imagine. Well, actually, gosh, then Norway just should feel right up your alley. You're all just fine with the cold temperatures.
Yeah, exactly. And surprisingly enough, Germany and Wisconsin are very, very similar as well. I mean, in terrain and weather, and it really felt like I was back in Wisconsin for my time there.
Oh, I could see that. That does make sense. So with that travel, what is one travel item you will not leave home without?
I'm always going to bring a map, whether it's a old school paper map, a digital map, or Google Maps or something like that. I always want to have that with me, for a couple of reasons. Like the biggest one is, like, I use Prague as an example. The few times that I visited there, if you've ever been there, there's a flood of people that go between the St. Charles Bridge and the astronomical clock, right? Those kind of two iconic pieces of Prague. Okay. And there's just thousands of people on what's probably about a 6-block path. But you go 1 block on either side of that, is deserted. And that's where I want to see, right? I want to go deep into a city and understand not just the touristy things, which I still want to see too, but what's it like to live there? What are the hidden gems? All right. And oftentimes that means getting lost. And I don't love being lost. So I like to have that map to help me unwind my way back into the wider parts of the city. But yeah, I can't be there without that map to show me both where I've been and where I'm going.
God, I love the map there. I find that Venice is similar to what you're describing, that there are very main paths that everyone walks in Venice. But if you purposely walk, and the word block I don't think necessarily applies, but basically just get slightly, just one courtyard, one piece off of that main path, and it is as if you were in a different city. We took a walking tour there, and the guides purposely took us into these spaces, and I had no idea that these quiet, brilliant, more authentic, I think, spaces existed. So your use of the map is important there, because yes, there are some places that, my goodness, I would be lost. It's fun to get a couple blocks off of the main road, but my gosh, I got to get back at some point. So, so back to thinking about innovation in the pandemic. We talked about how y'all use the pandemic challenge to get aggressive with innovation and customer experience ideas. Now, I know that not just the pandemic, but even other modes of watching movies presented a new challenge to the industry. How are you using that to inspire new ideas?
Yeah, so definitely we are in a new environment.
Yeah.
Right? But one of the first learnings that we've had as that started to look like a competitive issue was that customers who stream movies are also the same people who go to movies. Right. So these aren't different people, right? So those customers are the same. So what we end up competing against is your living room, first off. But then we're also competing against all of the other forms of entertainment. And this is even before we get into competing amongst the theater chains. So
yeah, right.
Our first pass, especially coming out of the pandemic, is we have to treat this as an industry challenge. So this is a way across all of the exhibitors. So how do we, again, compete against streaming, and how do we compete against the new adult mini golf place that's opened over in Grandscape here, which
Right.
is actually a lot of fun. But
It does look really cool.
it is. But it comes back to creating that right experience, right? We talked about escapism, and how do we keep that movie going experience fresh and new? So we've got recliners now, and now we have heated recliners with the reserve seating. And another innovation we've just started to kick off post pandemic was that idea of, as you mentioned, hey, when I get to the theater now, I don't show up early because I don't have to fight for a seat anymore. So I'm showing up 5 minutes beforehand and I go right to my seat. But oftentimes, if there's even the shortest line of concession, people will see that and say, I don't feel like waiting. I'm going to go into and enjoy the movie. And that sub-optimizes the experience, right? Because movie's supposed to be with the drink and with your popcorn and with your snacks, right? That's the experience we're trying to create. So we launched a program called Snacks in a Tap, where you're allowed to, or where you're able to on your phone purchase your concessions at the point where you're buying your ticket. So a single transaction. And then say you can either pick up when you get there, there'll be a slot where you can pick it up, or you can have it delivered to your seat.
Yeah. All
Yeah,
right.
exactly. And that's again helping us with that experience of, hey, you want the popcorn, but how do we make it as seamless as possible, and how do you make it just a single transaction? And basically, by the time you get to the theater, it's all done, and your job when you get there is to enjoy the movie and enjoy your snacks. So another innovation we've pushed there.
Yeah, that one. What I like about that too is I bet there can be, now I'm guessing, operational benefits to that as well, in that instead of everyone loading up the concession consumption moment in those 5 minutes before the theater, you can actually use your team to pre-plan that, and it's staged at the the seats ahead of time, and all of that kind of, it allows you to almost what am I trying to say here? Spread out and distribute the effort associated with the delivery, the acquisition, and then the delivery of those concessions.
Yes, absolutely. And it gives us insight as to what's about to happen as well. You can see if it's going to be very busy.
Oh
and
yeah.
we can plan for that accordingly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it helps us deliver that better experience, and that little bit of insight, just knowing that the next 15 minutes are going to be really busy, we can
Yeah.
react to that instead of having to let it happen and then kind of react.
Scramble and absolutely. So I'm unfortunately I'm looking at the clock and I realize we're running low on time here, and it makes me sad. So I do want to close out though, because we talked a little, I teased a little operational there. And I think about, you've got an operational background. And I know I've talked with guests in the airline and hospitality industry about that blend of operations and customer. And you weave those together to create those great customer experiences. So you have, sort of a great customer focus. Well, then you've delighted them. But if you don't have the operational, you only do it once and you won't sustain it. I'm curious, tell me more about how you specifically weave those two worlds together.
Yeah, I think it's a case of both listening to customers and then watching them as well, because what they say and what they do aren't always tied together. And
Yeah.
you could hear that in the surveys and the customer feedback, and just speaking with customers on a regular basis. They're never going to really tell you what the innovation is. They're going to tell you, in a survey, what's wrong, what didn't live up to expectations, and we always have to make those better. But if you watch them, that's where you can start to see those innovations form. Like we mentioned earlier with the private watch party, like, hey, someone tried to buy all the seats.
Yeah.
What is it that they're trying to do? Oh, well, okay, there's that insight. Let's dig in. Let's learn there. And then also with Snacks in a Tap, the original version of that had you ordering your concessions on your phone. Well, that's not the experience we want, because what's worse than being in a movie theater when someone's on their phone?
Oh, yes.
So you say, well, what does that look like if we do it in advance? And why not do it when you're buying your ticket, right? Because that's your captive audience. So just understanding that flow, what are they doing at each step as well? That's where the innovation will come from. So we have to hear the customer, because they're going to tell us what we need to keep doing. But you have to watch the customer to see where that next innovation should come, and see where you can either make that a better experience or make it more seamless.
I like that. Hear and watch. That is, and then you didn't say it, but you did say it, and then act upon it, right? So
absolutely.
You listened, you watch it. It's not just, you're not just sitting at the movie when you're watching the customer or hearing them. You're actually then creating the movie and acting after the fact. Well, Todd, this has been fun. I've enjoyed it. And I was even surprised by some of the things I've learned, because I know you and I have continued to talk throughout this period, but I learned a few new things today and enjoyed that. So Todd, I appreciate you kind of walking us through what happened those first few days, and then how you pivoted that into innovation. I definitely want to get to Bamberg and
Absolutely.
enjoy that at some point. And it's just nice to be able to get kind of peel that curtain back and see how your industry is really creating what is needed to bring folks back to the theater and have that shared experience that has been missing for so long. Todd, I thank you for being on the episode today. Enjoyed the heck out of it. Get out there and see a good movie this evening.
Sounds great. Thanks again for having me, and we'll see you at the movies.
Thanks for joining us this week on CX Passport. Make sure to visit our website, cxpassport.com, where you can hit subscribe so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, you can check out the rest of the EX4CX website. If you're looking to get real about customer experience, EX4CX is available to help you increase revenue by starting to listen to your customers and create great experiences for every customer, every time. Thanks for listening to CX Passport, and be sure to tune in for our next episode. Until next time, I'm Rick Denton, and I believe the best meals are served outside and require a passport.